Namaste. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat. I am your host Kamal Madi Shetty. Today on our show, we have a very special guest with whom we are going to discuss some very interesting topics and issues that concern Bharat today. We have with us Esther Dhanraj ji. Esther ji is a former Christian with 25 years of faith in and almost a decade of academic study of Christianity. She is a public speaker, and her talks focus on the history of the church, Old and the New Testament, and Christian theology as it relates to the practice of faith and doctrines. She also works at the grassroots level, educating the disadvantaged communities about the true nature of Christianity. Namaste, Esther ji. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat.
Thank you, Kamal ji. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Esther ji, for joining us today at the Festival of Bharat. First of all, Esther ji, I would like to ask you, how have you been doing in these difficult times of the pandemic?
I'm well, Kamal ji. Survived the pandemic, and thank you. Hope you're doing the same.
Absolutely, Esther ji. We are delighted to have you today. I want to begin this conversation, Esther ji, with your life journey, which is truly fascinating. Now, from being born as a Hindu to getting converted to Christianity and then leaving that faith, it's quite a journey. So for the benefit of our viewers, can you share how all of this happened?
Yeah, first of all, pleasure to be here. As far as my journey goes, where do I begin? Let me give you a glimpse into what my pre-Christian life was like. We were, I must say, an urban but conservative Brahmin family. My father was a Gayatri Upasak, and my mother was in different Vratams each day of the week. And I grew up watching my grandmother perform Pratha Sandhya Vandanam. I vividly remember the Surya Namaskara mantra and the Pradakshina mantra that I memorized, listening to her, recite them each morning. And so strongly was it etched in our memories, in the sense my siblings and I, that after we became Christians, we used to discuss among ourselves how not to recite it subconsciously. That's how strongly it was etched in our memories. So it's demonic, right? If you know anything about the practice of Christianity, it's demonic to even utter a word from the mantra, any mantra. Our puja mandir was complete with a large Vyasapitam over which was kept an ancient copy of Bhagavatam. And my father performed Rudrabhishekam very often. And our home always used to smell of camphor and sambrani and agarbatti. So, and we followed the lunar calendar, except for, of course, official purposes. And following the Panchang was very important. These are some of those Hindu memories that I have of our lives before we got converted. And my grandmother used to help us perform pujas during festivals. We celebrated them with a lot of pomp. Our Deepavali went on for days after the actual festival was over. But the sad thing in all of this is, to us siblings, Hinduism was limited to just celebrating festivals and watching our elders perform these lavish annual pujas and daily rituals. Other than that, I must say that there wasn't much instruction in terms of Hindu philosophy or Vedanta or even the scientific value of our scriptures. Well, I don't think even our elders knew that there was anything scientific in our scriptures. And there was absolutely no ingraining of a general sense of pride of being a Hindu. That was Hinduism for me. And our lives, my family's life took a sudden turn when I was about 13 years of age. And we were living in Odisha, which is Orissa previously at that time. And our family was suddenly thrown into a rough patch in life. And our neighbor was a fisherman. I mean, fisher of men. So actually, fisher of men is a biblical expression. That's what the Bible tells the proselytizers to be. And this is really serious. I mean, I may be sounding, humorous, but this is really serious because Jesus allegedly says he will make his followers into fishers of men. The only difference between a fisher of fish and a fisher of men is that fisher of fish carries a fishing hook. And guess what the fisher of men carries?
Yes, it's the Bible.
A fishing book.
Okay. Yes.
The Bible, yes. The difference is in the tool each one uses to fish, the hook and the book. So this fisher of men, who was our immediate neighbor, gets a whiff of our family situation. And here is another important contrast between the fish that are caught by the hook and the fish that are caught by the book. The fish that are caught by the hook are made vulnerable after they are caught. Okay, but the fish that are caught by the book are made to feel vulnerable so they could be caught. See the difference?
Yes.
So one is the hooked fish and the other is the booked fish. That's how I'd like to call it. So my family was booked by this fisher of men, and then he caught us. That would be the long story short. So my family moves to Hyderabad at this juncture, and here the original fisher is joined by more fishers of men from the local church. And I want you to understand here, and even I want to educate my viewers here, that just like there are career fishermen and leisure fishermen, there are also career fishers of men and leisure fishers of men. And they all want a piece of the proselytization pie. Why? Because heaven is distributing badges of conquest, So they earn a badge for every fish they catch. So the original fisher, that's the neighbor in Odisha, was a leisure fisher by the definition. And the one from the local church in Hyderabad was a career fisher. And this career fisher was supported by a church in Australia. So together, they convinced my family that the reason our sumptuous life that we were living until that point was taken away from us because the Christian God had chosen our family to be saved. Don't ask me saved from what?
Right.
Saved. So this actually marks the beginning of my parents' journey into Christianity. Now here begins my personal journey. So this original fisher, the neighbor in Odisha, follows us to Hyderabad. And so diligent he was in his pursuit of our family that he visited us along with his wife. And his wife called herself a prophetess. I'll get in a minute to who a prophetess is and what they do. So they all made it seem like the church was very humanitarian, very charitable, and stood with my family, while none of our Hindu relatives stood by us in our time of need, But here's the thing. There is some truth to how the church presented it. It is true that I can talk from our perspective, my family's perspective. So it's true that our Hindu relatives who we entertained until that point for pujas and annual events, functions, festivals, and all that, turned us away when we needed them. We don't like this fact as Hindus, and we don't like to admit it. But hey, that's the truth, So this, I think, is the advantage that proselytizers have. And it's just an advantage that they are taking. It's just a situation that they are taking advantage of, not that they care for human beings or that they care for their neighbors or anything. They have an agenda, and we all know what that is. I also like to talk here about, I'm digressing a little bit, but let me put it on record that the term rice bag converts has been made popular these days, right? But look at it this way. If a rice bag is what a Hindu family is converting for, why not a fellow Hindu supply it to the needy Hindu and prevent him from becoming a booked fish? It's just a rice bag, isn't it? Well, the truth is, it is not. It is more than just a rice bag. Now, unless rice bag is just a metaphor for all that the church promises to provide to the convert. Whether it keeps the promise or not is a different thing, right? So we know it doesn't, which is why we are seeing converts returning to their roots. But to a vulnerable person, get into his shoes and understand this. To a vulnerable person who just wants his troubles to vanish magically, now that promise, that shoulder at that moment is more than enough. It's the emotional support, I would say, the Abhaya Hastam that we call, that the vulnerable people need in time of their need. The monetary aspects come later, whether they come or not, that's all secondary, but it's the emotional aspect that comes first. And so my thing is just be there for your fellow Hindu. So that's 50% of the problem solved. So I even say this, why complain that somebody else with an agenda is coming to the aid of a needy family? Why don't we become that aid and make it our agenda to retain him in the fold and protect Dharma from falling for these false promises? Okay, let me come back to my journey. So now that my parents were convinced, it was a turn of us siblings. Okay, so this that neighbor in Odisha who used to visit us from, visit us with his family. So whenever the husband and wife used to visit us, they stayed with us for a few days. And during those days, they conducted what Christianity calls fasting prayer sessions. And I said, right, the wife claimed to be a prophetess. So let me explain what happens during a prophetic prayer session. A prophesying is claimed to be one of the spiritual gifts in Christianity. So Christianity claims that the Christian God reveals the future to the one who is given this gift, the spiritual gift. The future could be about another Christian, or the church that the prophet belongs to, or the Christian community in general, or the church, the universal church in general. The prophecy could be about anything. But this is where it gets interesting. The prophet or the prophetess do not speak in plain language. He or she speaks in what Christianity calls tongues. It's unintelligible words and sounds more like gibberish. So people that are gathered in the church or in the prayer session do not understand what this prophetess or prophet is saying. Now, there's another spiritual gift, which is the interpretation of this gibberish that's being spoken by the prophet or prophetess. So in this case, the wife had the gift of prattling, and the husband had the gift of interpreting the prattle. So during the prophetic prayer sessions at my home, she claimed that the Christian God had shown that he chose me, as in Esther, as his agent to bring more souls to his kingdom.
Okay.
Now, I was a teenager, and teenagers love to be teenagers. I mean, I was at that age where I was trying to find myself, So all teenagers do that, right? So when she told that, she had me. When she had me in her net, in her hook, whatever she was using. So she said that God was also going to give me the gift of healing. So basically, he was going to make me a soul vulture. So catch more fish through the charade of healing. That's what she said. Well, clearly, God and she both got it wrong, for here I am. So So we as a family, once we moved to Hyderabad, after this, I mean, while all this was going on, we as a family began attending the Australia-funded local church every Sunday. So we became the members of that church. With the combined effort of the career and the leisure fishers, my family abandoned their Hindu identity. So it took about a year from the first time the neighbor stepped into our house or into our family. So the local fisher closely followed up with us, so we don't U-turn. That's what they do. They're good at that. They don't leave you. They don't leave you. So they make sure that you have intensified, your faith has intensified, and until then, they're actually pushing you deeper into the web. So the local pastor of the Australia-funded church that we were attending followed up with us closely, and thereafter, it was a slow transition for my siblings and I into Christianity. So in between this time, my parents got baptized and they became full-fledged Christians, and I became a Christian in the early 90s, 1992 to be precise. And here is something very important. By the time I officially became a Christian, I had been injected with some strong resentment for idols, prasad, everything Hindu. And this resentment is the right ingredient to be called a true Christian, at least in this Australian-funded denomination that my family was a part of, which is called Hebron. It's a Hebron denomination. And you are a true Christian when you are able to resent idols with a passion. And basically a passionate hatred for everything Hindu, the shlokas, the scriptures, the temples, the festivals, heritage, culture, art, just about everything, the entire Hindu identity too. So you're not a true Christian if you even touch the feet of your parents to take your blessings. Because a Christian God is a jealous God, and love for him must come before love for your nation or even your loved ones. You cannot salute to the flag either. So, I mean, this is the brand of Christianity that's practiced in India. Otherwise, in America, you would see some of the fine patriots coming from the Christian community. So that's a sad reality of our country. Kamalji, I also have to tell you here that my parents, even in their acute Christianness, because at this point they became real Christians and they started going to church, read their Bible, they abandoned their Hindu identity. Well, my mother did not. I mean, she continued to wear her bindi and all that. But as far as the worship was concerned, they were worshiping and believing in the Christian God. Even in that acute Christianness, they strongly objected to the criticism of Hindus and Hindu practices during the weekly sermons that the pastor used to deliver at our home. I remember my father telling the pastor, Pastor, do we have to disparage somebody else to exalt our own? So is the Christian God so weak that he can only be made to stand on the criticism of other gods? So let's not get into that criticism. If you have good thing to say from the Bible, tell it to us. We will listen. So he was he was a polite person. So he had his own way of saying it. And the pastor never abused the Hindus, at least not when he used to deliver sermons at our weekly prayer meetings. So also, my family was unique in one sense, which is my grandmother continued to live with us and she continued to practice Hinduism. Her puja mandir, her practice of Surya Namaskaras, her Sandhya Vandanam, her Vyasapitam, everything was intact until the day she died. So my parents preferred it that way, even though they were told by several proselytizers, pastors that used to come to our house to have it removed and thrown out. And personally, I don't remember ever verbally abusing or even criticizing Hinduism or my Hindu relatives. what I had for them was pity that they were destined for eternal perishing. So long story short, the next 25 years, I went from a devout to a fanatic Christian. And by the time I left Christianity, I was practicing the most fundamentalist variety of Christianity.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.